Hi, so welcome to this 5-minute video. My name is William Qianwei Yang. You can just call me William. So over the next 5 minutes, I would like to show you how to master visualization descriptions. So you can try to use the sources to present data effectively. So first, let's take a look at some common types of visualization tools. So I would like to share with you some samples. So let's start with the first one on the top left corner. So here you can see some of the most frequently used visualization tools. For example, we can find the line graph, the area graph. We can also find the pie chart. You also see the bar graph. Then you still find some diagram. Also, we see the so-called histogram. So here I would like to point out, many people tend to confuse histogram with bar graph, but actually the two graphs are different. Most of the bar graphs shows data in different categories, and histograms are used to show continuous data over a period of time. So normally there will be gaps between the bars, the vertical bars in histogram. And now let's move on to our second sample here. So you can see the bubble map. So we often use the bubbles to show sets of data in different sizes or amounts. And you can see this clearly on this map. And now let's move on to the third slide. So here we have the third example. This is a flow chart. As you know, we often use the flow chart to describe how a process starts, develops, and ends. And then we move on to the next sample. This one is an infographic. An infographic is also a really common type of graph. We often use pictures or symbols to symbolize the sets of data we try to display. So in the sample here, you see the vehicle sales. So we use different symbols of vehicles to show sales of different car models. And now let's move on to the next sample. This one is a mind map. This one is offered by a Google career advisor. So we often use the mind map to show how we organize our thoughts. We also use the mind map to show how you structure an idea or to show the relations or hierarchical relations among ideas. And finally, I'd like to share with you another really common visualization tool in finance. This one is a tree map chart. We often use that to show proportions among different sets of data. All right, so now you know what we call these visualization tools. Now let's discuss how we can describe them. So I'd like to share with you a few samples. So we're going to start with the two types of line graph, and then we're going to move on to a histogram. So let's start with the first line graph. So here's a line graph offered by AquaScript. So in this line graph, you can see some really common changes in numbers. So let's try to describe the different segments of the line. Let's start with the first four numbers. So in number one, we see this line going up. So you can say here the number is rising or increasing steadily. And then you can see that the line begin to go down a bit. So here you can say the number is falling or the number drops slightly. And then in line 3, you can see the line is going up like this. So here we can say the number is increasing sharply or dramatically. Or you can say the number jumps or skyrockets. And then we come to number 4. So here you see the line reaches a certain high point. So here you can say the number peaks or the number reaches the zenith, which means the highest point. And here we can see the other second half of the line. So let's start with number 5. So you can see that the line began to flatten So if this happens, you can say the number begins to level off, or the number remains steady, unchanged. And then we move on to number 6. So here we can see the number begins to go up and down in zigzag. So here you can say the number fluctuates. But sometimes maybe the number will go up and down rather slowly at a slower pace. So you can say the number oscillates. In number 7, we can see that the line begins to go down in this manner. So in this case, we can say the number is declining sharply, or the number plummets. We can also say the number plunges. And now we come to the final segment of the line. So here you can say now the number is going down or decreasing quite steadily or moderately compared with the previous 7 segments. So now we come to the final sample here. So I would like to show you a line graph. So here we can see the multiple lines intersect or overlap with one another. For example, here the different lines show the GDP of different countries. So in this case, you can mention that the red line representing China GDP and the yellow line representing German GDP, they form the so-called crossing lines. Or we can also mention they tend to cross over, or they tend to overlap, or they tend to intersect near the end of the year 2006. And now here's the final sample I'd like to discuss with you. This one is a histogram. We often use the histogram to show the trend in the changes of numbers. This one is a histogram showing the core PCE index of the US. So we can see there's a sharp increase. So we can say right now, the histogram shows that the core PCE is exhibiting some upward trend or the ascent. So the number is increasing at every stage of time. And the opposite would be the downward slope or the descent. And still, we can also try to compare the core index in 2012, in 2022, and in 2021. So you can say the bars, the vertical bars in 2022 is substantially or significantly higher than the bars in 2021. So I hope that you find today's video useful. And later, we're going to talk about how to cite a source. I'll see you later.